The DavidCommentary.com show is all about you, your project, your music, your brand. Join the multi-creative community at DavidCommentary.com. Hi, everybody. This is David Commentary, and welcome to the show. If you're an entertainer, entrepreneur, e-marketer, if you want to take your business to the next level, then this is the place to be. Joining me via Zoom from Canada, my good friend Barry Spilchuk, author of A Cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul, one of the first franchise author from the Chicken Soup for the Soul series by Jack Canfield and Mark Vester Hansen. Also known as the Dale Carnegie of Canada, a fantastic speaker. I got a chance to spend many years with him, learning from him, and it was just an amazing time of self-growth and development. And then he went on to do some really fantastic things in the world of cancer, actually helping people get through cancer. Joining with me, Barry Spilchuk, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, David, I literally got goosebumps. I was seeing you again and remembering as soon as you said, oh, it's so many years, I went, that was a few gray hairs ago.
Yeah.
I'm glad I still have hair.
Yeah, and
this is not a wig.
All the gray hair I've been avoiding, it's now showing up. So it's like,
really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's slightly.
Slightly. There's some wisdom in a bottle,
I've
forever black hair.
I've decided, I've decided I want to age on camera. So I'm going to start younger and then just, remove some of the dye slowly but surely over the next couple of years. And then
a couple of years ago, I had to renew my passport, and in Canada, the rule is you have to get somebody in authority to sign your passport and all. So I went to my accountant and we were looking at it, and then I said, oh, hair color. And I said, this was 10 years ago. I said, brown? And he goes, gray. Oh, well.
So let's start from the beginning, only because, this is a new format to the show. Barry has been, on my other shows over the years. He's actually been on a lot of the shows that I've produced over the years. But really, just for our new audience, just let's talk a little bit about you. The way you and I met was at a seminar, IBI, but at the time you were lauded as Cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul author. Can you tell us, can we start there and just tell us about you?
Oh, sure. So I felt very blessed to be called. I went to this IBI place, and I was a student in the very first class. And I did something that Bernie Dorman, the founder, he would never, ever forget, because it was kind of goofy, because I tend to be kind of goofy. I mean, a Canadian, with an accounting background, how can I be goofy? Well, I am. So, so I went to 3 classes, and all of a sudden, Bernie said, hey, how'd you like to teach here? It was like, oh. I mean, it was like a dream. I thought, no, never one day. But yeah, because I wrote him a letter saying, someday I'll fly down from Toronto all the way down to San Diego or fly down to Los Angeles just to give a door speech. And he read the letter. And the next day he pulls me aside. He said, hey, if you want to be an instructor here, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I said, I'd be willing to do all that. He said, good, you're filling in for Jack Canfield next month because he can't make it.
Wow.
And so I'm studying, and I just like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I get this shower. I'm a God guy. So if you're not a God guy, that's okay. Gmail is gut mail. And if you're a God guy, Gmail is God mail, right? And I get this shower idea. How am I going to show these people what this class is all about? And then I just get this thing that's like, write a book. And I went, write a book? I've never even read a book. How am I going to write a book? Like, what am I doing? And then so I got chills down my left-hand side, but not down my right-hand side. So I knew it was coming. And then I'm in the shower going, what am I going to write a book about? He says, write about what you know. And all of a sudden, I remembered I was Jack Canfield's apprentice before the Chicken Soup for the Soul. And Jack and Mark taught me the power of a mastermind team and all this kind of stuff. So I decided to write a book called The Power of Mastermind. And this was back in 1994. And long story short, I was supposed to be on stage in 26 days. And my heavenly download was, I want you to write the book, produce the book, get it ready for sale, and sell it in 26 days. So I went, what? Oh my God. You can talk about love and get paid? I was like, whoa. And I went, you got to love yourself. You got to love your family. You got to love your team. You got to love your business partners, because love is the number one business strategy. And we talked that for years. And so when I walked out there, and then of course I add in the goofiness, because I guess this is almost cliche. You got to be yourself. Well, I'm a goof sometimes. And guess what? Apparently they liked the goof. So when Jack came back the next month, they said, no, Barry, you're coming back too. I went, what?
Barry, let's talk a little bit about A Cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Tell us how that whole thing happened.
Oh, cool. So most people know Chicken Soup for the Soul was this big book. I came to Jack and Mark and said, I was actually apprenticing for Jack in the back of the room. Here I am from Canada, and I flew down to California every year and spent 2 weeks with Jack at the back of the room for no pay, just to hang out with my mentor, right? And because I was from Toronto, I guess I was a tormentor, but boom, rim shot. But anyway, so when Chicken Soup started to get popular, I went down one year. I was a little bit late. And what ended up happening was the rule was you had to be there on time or you couldn't be on the team. But the reason I was late was because I was filling in for Jack because he couldn't make the engagement. So they said, can we send Barry? So they gave me that special dispensation. But when they brought me in the very next day and they say, hey, I want you to meet a friend of mine. He's done this, he's done this, he's done this. And he says, now let's have a few more intro. And this one guy says, oh, Jack, thank you for being here. I felt like, you've given me a little bowl of soup here. This is awesome. This is, oh, okay, cool. And then we go to lunch, and the team was in 20 people on the team. So 10 went, and I sit down and I said, oh, I'll have the soup and sandwich. And the waiter goes, do you want the cup of soup, sir, or the bowl of soup? And I went, cup of soup. So before I left, you see, sometimes you have to have the courage to ask the question. I said, Jack, I know we're here for 2 weeks, but at some point, can we have a coffee together or go to dinner together? Oh, sure, no problem. 2 nights later, what's up? I said, I think we should take Chicken Soup for the Soul, shrink it down to a pocket-sized version, and call it Cup of Soup. So here's the original size. There's the Cup of Soup size. And he went, oh, what a brilliant idea. And 4 days after the conference was over, I got a call. We don't have time. You do it.
Oh, wow.
I got to go home to my home city, and I got to tell, because Chicken Soup was getting popular, and I got to say, hey, guys, I'm writing a book with Jack and Mark. I'm writing a book with Jack and Mark. Guess what happened? 6 months later, Jack calls, hey, how's the book coming along? Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. What was I doing? I was talking about writing a book with Jack and Mark. I wasn't writing a book with Jack and Mark. So for those of us who we haven't got that level of success yet, it's because sometimes we keep talking and we haven't started doing. So I come down, he says, you got about 4 weeks. I want you down in my guest house in 4 weeks. Okay. And I walk and I show him 90 stories. He reads every one and he looks at me and he goes, we're in trouble. I went, buddy, hey, I love you, man. He goes, oh, Barry, let's stop right there. I love you too. And business is business and friends are friends. Chicken Soup is just starting to take off. It's just grabbing a hold. He says, we cannot afford to release a weak book. He said, so you either go back to Canada and we'll see you in 6 months, or you stay here for a couple of weeks, get this book on track, and we'll see what we can do. And so when your mentor has enough guts to tell you this isn't good enough, it can be devastating. But the truth, man, next to love, truth is the next key in business that we have to have. We have to have the truth to tell people, hey, this is my vision. And no, I'm sorry, that doesn't fit my vision. And, put feelings aside. I'll always remember that. Business is business and friends are friends. I love you. And this manuscript isn't good enough. So then I had to invoke team. I call my wife, and here I am in Santa Barbara in February. I call my wife back in Canada in February. There's a little bit of snow and it's 30 below, right? Hey, hon, Jack says the manuscript isn't good enough. And Karen's first words were, but you already knew that, didn't you?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did. So she said, what's the deal? I said, Jack says stay here for 2 weeks or come back in 6 months. She said, I'll take care of the kids. You stay there for 2 weeks. This is a huge break for you. And thank you to my wife for that. So truth and honesty, she knew too, but she didn't want to hurt my feelings, so she didn't tell me ahead of time.
It just reminds me of, one of the things that my coach said to me. I said, can't you see everything that can go wrong or is wrong with somebody when they walk in the door? And he's like, pretty much yes. I'm like, but you really can't tell them all of it at the same time. He's all, most of the time, no. sometimes you can take it all, and other times it's like, well, let me give you a piece of it, because otherwise it just destroys you.
And again, I learned more lessons in honesty while I was there, because I felt he said, live in the house with us. And I went, no. I felt like I was disappointing him. It was all this, Canadian self-esteem, apologizing all the time. But I wanted my own space out in the guest house too. So I lived out in the guest house. And but I also shared the guest house with the staff who came into the kitchen in the morning. Like,
oh my God.
Okay, there's Barry in his underwear. Oh yeah. But I was up till 4 a.m. the first night, and apparently Jack got up to go to the bathroom. The next morning he said to Patty, he says, he's one of us. And she says, how do you know? I said, I was up at 4 a.m. and he was still working. And it was like, oh, that was cool. But then when I would come in to ask a question, Jack said, Barry, time out. You always look like you're backing in. You think that you're, invading our space.
Imposing,
you got a question,
right.
Yeah. Come in and ask the question, get your answer, and get back to work.
The DavidCommentary.com show is brought to you by Juggle Mail. Juggle your business with Juggle Mail, the complete CRM.
He said, stop backing in and apologizing. He said, I know that's a Canadian thing to do, but it was something that I learned along the way myself. I had this insatiable desire to be liked. And if you take away the word like, that's a 4-letter word. And if you take away like the truth, what's the truth behind it? I had this insatiable desire to be loved.
To be loved, absolutely.
Love me. Yeah. So, and it's like, oh, but how do I do it? And I was going about it all the wrong ways. It's like, what do I do? And I kept doing it for a long, long time until I came down to the root cause, and then we dealt with it. So it was a pretty eye-opening experience, even though that was 30 years ago. It's as plain to me as if it happened yesterday.
Wow. And what's amazing is that book sold over 500,000 copies. It was the precursor to a myriad of franchise books that came after that. And you also became a Chicken Soup for the Soul speaker, basically, right? Because that was was part of it literally became a franchise. Like, it became training for speakers and blah, blah, when you were just like, I was here first.
Well, everybody tells the story, and they always say, oh, and refer to the Chicken Soup guys. But I still remember just before we were about to launch this, okay, I get a call from head office saying, Barry, your book's not going to be ready for the Chicago Book Fair. And I went, what? And, again, I'm a prayer guy. Heavenly Father, what do we do about this? And I said, why can't we there's a quote in the Bible that says, just taste and see that God is good. Just test him. And I said, why can't we create a little mini book? Why can't we create a book like this with 5 stories in it, just to give them a sip of soup or a sample of soup? And they went, what a great idea. So they said, yeah, come to the book show anyway, because they wanted to model McDonald's. McDonald's had franchises. They had McDonald's University. So they did Chicken Soup. They did Chicken Soup University. So we all got together, and I went to the book show, and I was signing little versions of this with 5 stories in it.
Wow.
And people were lined up and to receive it as if they were getting the whole book. As a result of that, we sold 180,000 copies of that book at the Chicago Book Show. Now, I have no illusion.
That's insane. That's again, that's 180,000 copies of a book at a book show. That's insane.
Based on a sample. And again, I know it's 99.999% because it said Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Totally, without a doubt. Okay.
But it was my idea. And then I had an idea later on down the line, and I said, hey, guys, I have an idea. They sell soup in cans. Why don't we sell soup books in cans? Long story short, we sold 50,000 extra books because we put it in a can.
Wow.
So I teach people when they come to me for business training on a book, I say, my book is a business. What business things can we put on it? And then somebody else came up with a great idea. Hey, Barry, your book is called Cup of Soup. So they packaged it with a cup, and that said Chicken Soup for the Soul on it, and put this with it. And for like 10 or 12 bucks, you got both. The biggest mistake they made is they only made 10,000 of them because they put them in Costco and they disappeared. And so I'm watching an old episode of Everybody Loves Raymond the other day, and on Raymond's desk in his basement is a cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul. That was for me.
God, so that's great.
That was kind of cool,
Once again, my guest, Barry Spilchuk, just told you the story about a cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul. The process of him basically creating that book, he talked about a very valuable lesson, which again, is one of the it's definitely one of the pillars of Jack and Mark's work, and I think it's a pillar of any self-development, which is truth. And like years ago, this is kind of funny. I worked with somebody business-wise that was a true Pollyanna. And it was, and what I mean by, I'm all for being positive. I get it. Like, if anything, because I grew up in theater, I'm used to people giving me notes, and sometimes I know that I'm a little too negative when we talk about projects because I list everything that's wrong. But the reality is that he was so Pollyanna that it was affecting production, because he literally would say, "Oh no, we can handle that," and we couldn't. Like, whatever. So there were times when he would say, "Oh no, I've got that handled," and he absolutely did not have it handled. And so that's why I think is interesting about the ability to say, be confident, stay positive, but there's a certain layer of real truth that comes down to when you're looking at your business and your project. Can you give us a minute again on truth to capsulize that before we go into the next segment?
Well, yeah, sure. Just to be 100% truth, David, you said a couple times that I'm the first franchisee outside the family, because Jack and Mark had their assistants wrote books, and like Chicken Soup for the Christian Soul, Chicken Soup for the, and then there was Chicken Soup for the Soul. So I'm the first outside the country, but I was the 7th book in the series. They had Chicken Soup 1, 2, and 3. So I was the 7th book. So I just wanted to, again, under the premise of honesty and truth. But just the truth is, you got to look at yourself. Why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? And for me, when I sat down, I pictured my aunt. My aunt was my godmother. And she went through so many stuff, because my charity of choice for this book, even though they said, "Oh, Barry, you don't need one. You're up in Canada." And I went, "What?" I said, "No, I'm standing up for myself." I pictured my aunt who would get up every morning. She would drive to work in tears, go to work at lunchtime. Everybody else is going to lunch together. She's the executive secretary to the president. When he wasn't around, she'd be sitting at her desk, eating lunch, go to work, go home in tears, go to school, drive at night school in tears. And I said, "Auntie Margie, why are you doing that?" She says, "Because she had to make enough money to hire a lawyer so she could sue for custody of her kids back, because her kids were stolen from her twice."
Wow.
And so that's why my charity of choice, because when I said to the Chicken Soup guys, I want my charity of choice to be supporting single mothers, somebody had office said, "Oh, you can't support single mothers. What's that going to say?" I was going to say, if you don't support single mothers, what are you saying? So sometimes you have to stand up for yourself and tell the truth about who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. And so here I am at 4:00 in the morning in Jack's guest house writing the story. Why? Because my Auntie Margie had to do what she had to do to get her kids back. So when you've got your strong why, your truth is easy to follow, because if this isn't truth, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it.
That's amazing. Once again, my guest, Barry Spilchuk, author of A Cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul, a personal development speaker. Let's talk about really something that came after you and I spent time together, which was your bout with cancer, and the fact that you're helping people who also have been diagnosed with cancer. We're really going into part 2 of sort of the story. I don't know if it's not really part 2. It's really, but there's a whole thing that happened. The ongoing saga with Barry, which was.
It was, again, that's a long story. I'll make it short as possible. But I was going through a whole bout of stuff at the same time. I learned my ABCs: accident, bankruptcy, cancer, divorce, almost divorce, employee theft, ABCDE, all in an 18-month span. And all because of that stuff. And F is for fraud, because we tried to save 1 million marriages. We hired a guy to do an infomercial down in California there. $225,000 US dollars translated into almost 400,000 Canadian dollars, and he disappeared on us. And all of that stuff happened all at the same time. And everything was great. I had 16 credit cards. Everybody was just fine. And all of a sudden the yogurt hit the fan, and now I'm using Visa to pay MasterCard.
Right.
And I'm, American Express. Remember they used to have that commercial and said, "Please leave home without it." It says, "Don't leave home without it." They called me and said, "Please leave home without it." Right?
Exactly.
And all of this stuff piled on at the same time. I went up to 432 pounds. I had my own zip code by that point. Okay. And then all of a sudden my wife says, "I still love you, but I don't want to be married anymore. This stress is too much." And it was like, so we put the plans in place for a divorce. And then all of a sudden, so we moved apart for a while. We were in different houses. And all of a sudden I get a call one day, and actually Karen invited me over for dinner. We're still best friends. She invited me over for dinner, and with the kids and everything. And all of a sudden they're all saying, "Dad, you don't look too good."
The DavidCommentary.com show is produced at Spark Studio Soundstage, San Diego's premier film, TV, and creative space, featuring a 3,000 square foot double-walled soundstage and over 20,000 square feet of shootable space. Perfect for your next video, TV, podcast, or hybrid seminar event. Visit sparkstudiosoundstage.com.
She invited me over for dinner, and with the kids and everything. And all of a sudden they're all saying, "Dad, you don't look too good. Why don't you lay down?" And so I laid down, woke up a little bit later, and they said, "You need to stay over." So one of the kids pulled their mattresses off the bed, threw it on the floor. I slept there. I woke up at 5:00 in the morning. Sheets are soaked right through. And it's like, uh-oh. So the ambulance comes, takes me. After 29 hours and emerged. They said, "We think it's a touch of cancer." And I said, "What's a touch of cancer?" And they said, "Well, we're going to admit you." I was there for 35 days because on the third day, this doctor walks in, and he had a very, very heavy accent because in Toronto, there's a lot of the teaching hospitals are international. And he go, "May I do an accent for you? Is it going to be offensive?"
Oh,
no,
if fine.
No. Well, so the doctor walks in, "Mr. Spilchuk." Yes. He says, "You've got cancer." And I went, "Okay."
See, if I did it would be less offensive.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. So I said, "I kind of sort of knew that from the other day." "Oh, but we've done more tests, and your cancer really, really, really serious." And I went, "What is it?" And he says, "It's stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma."
Oh my God.
And I went, "Okay, what are you implying?" And the implication was, you better get your affairs in order.
Right.
So, my internal is crying, but I'm trying to stay strong. And my default mechanism is humor. So I just looked at the doctor after I caught my breath, and I said, "You're trying to say I should get my affairs in order?" And he goes, "Yes." I said, "I haven't had any affairs." The nurse just about lost it. And the doctor goes, "Oh, that's not funny. That's not funny." And I went, "Yes, it is." And he says, we're putting you in the hospital. You must take this very seriously." And I went, "Okay, fine." But because I was scared, so I defaulted to humor. And again, I'm a God guy, and Heavenly Father, what am I supposed to do here? Because the cancer was eating away at my body. And I just got this Gmail that's like, "Make your nurses laugh and let them know how much they're appreciated." I didn't hear a heavenly voice or anything like that, but I just got an internal dialogue. And so what I did for the next 35 days was every time I had 16 different nurses in and out over these 35 days. And David, I know for a fact, I started healing before they gave me the first chemo. I had 8 chemos. And the same time, Karen's coming to, even though we were separated at the time, she's coming to see me at the hospital every day. She's also going to my condo, getting all the accounting papers, bringing them to the hospital, then taking them to the bankruptcy attorney because we're signing bankruptcy papers while I'm in the hospital. And it's like, this is crazy.
Wow.
And then it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Now, I always look for the blessed in the mess. So one night, it was the second night that I cried. And at 2:00 in the morning, Lynn Shepard, my nurse, comes in. She goes, "And how are we today?" And I went, "Been a tough day, Lynn." And she goes, "Holy crap, what's going on?" She says, "You always make me laugh. What's going on?" And I said, "Tough day." And she says, "Let me finish my rounds and I'll come in." And she came in and held my hand and sat there and said, "Why are you so tough?" I said, "Well, my wife went to the bankruptcy attorney today and brought all the papers. And the bankruptcy attorney says, 'Well, tell Barry to come down and sign the papers.'" And Karen said, "Well, Barry's at Princess Margaret Cancer Hospital. He's on intravenous. He can't get out of his bed. Can't you come to the hospital?" And the bankruptcy attorney said to my wife, "Tell him it's only 4 subway stops away."
What? Wow.
And it's like, how? And then when Karen told me that, I just like, "You've got to be kidding me. I'm dying here. This is happening. How do you do this to me? How can you do this?" And Lynn takes my hand and she says, "Barry, sweetie, listen to me here." She said, "I've been a nurse for 20 years. actually 25 years. I've been a nurse in this hospital for 20 years. She says, this is going to sound silly, but so many people don't like going to hospitals in the first place. But so many people are afraid that they're going to catch cancer if they walk into the door here. And I say, David, what's the bless and the mess? I immediately looked at Lynn and I had this warm feeling. I said, Lynn, will you accept an apology to that bankruptcy attorney on my behalf, even though she doesn't know the crazy thoughts I'm thinking about her? And here's the bless and the mess. When I went to write the book, The Cancer Dance, this was in 2013, guess what happened? I dressed up in a hospital gown just like this, and I've got an IV pole with me crossing the busiest street in Toronto. Why? Because I'm going to see my bankruptcy attorney, right? It's like, so we turned this, me in a hospital gown, crossing the busiest street in Toronto with an IV pole, we turned that into part of the marketing for the book. I would go on radio shows, and I would show up at the radio show dressed in my hospital gown with the IV pole.
Wow.
And the guy looks at me and says, you do know we're on radio. I said, yeah, but, just trust me. So we get in there and the radio interview, Barry, ladies and gentlemen, we got Barry Spilchuk. He's a 2-time cancer survivor. You're not going to believe this, but he's in the studio with a hospital gown. So, and it was like, thank you. So I want to thank that bankruptcy attorney for giving me that pain, because you never know, David, when you're going to hit rock bottom. You just never know.
Right.
And when you do know is when you start coming back the other side.
But let's sit down, and if you're out there, let's talk about goal setting. And one of the challenges of goal setting is simply that a lot of times we set outrageous goals in impossible periods of time. I want $1 million and I want it tomorrow. It's like, well, what did you do to get that? And then you consider yourself a failure because it didn't happen. But you name it: exercise, losing weight, changing your diet, right? Let's talk about that, the goal setting process, and why it works and why it doesn't.
Well, David, I'm glad you asked that, because anybody can go to YouTube and Google and find out how to set goals, and you'll learn about SMART goals and all that kind of stuff. I've got a bit of a different take on goals. I think our goals should be set based on our purpose. Why? Because if we're not, we're gonna, I'm gonna lose 50 pounds again this year. Well, hey, I've started the year when my goal was to lose 50 pounds. We're now, deep into January, and now my goal is I have to lose 60 pounds to lose the 50-pound goal. It's like, because it's not tied to our purpose. So, and again, I had something called perfection syndrome, and apparently a lot of people have that. And I wondered where it came from. And it turns out I had a secret for 50 years. 50 years. And the secret was I was sexually abused by my cousin when I was 8 years old. I didn't tell anybody about it because her statement to me was, if you tell anybody about it, no one will believe you.
Right.
And then I can't be your babysitter anymore, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, so, and then nobody, I know, okay, fine. So I didn't tell anybody about it. But it brought such a level of shame to me, because when we were doing what we were doing, she said, she invited us, we're going to wash each other's body parts. And when she said, okay, do this to my chest, and I did it, she goes, no, don't do it that way. Do it this way. Now, she probably said it more gentle. No, don't do it that way. But I heard as an 8-year-old, no, don't do it that way. Do it this way. And such a feeling of shame washed over me that it led to perfection syndrome. Because every time, 50 years later, I'm trying to release a new book, I'm trying to release a new dream, it's like I'm hearing, if I don't release this and it's not perfect, I'm going to hear, no, don't do it that way, do it this way.
Right.
And again, working backwards, I said, man, shame. I love what Brene Brown said about shame. She said, if perfection is in the driver's seat, shame is usually riding shotgun. And so I'm an acronym guy, and I said, Heavenly Father, what is shame? And all of a sudden, shame, S-H-A-M-E, secretly hiding a monstrous experience. But so a lot of people say, well, let it go and never speak of it again. And I say, okay, yeah, fine, but how do you do that? Unless you're teaching about it. Because now I get to teach people. And David, when you saw me teach those lessons down at IBI, there was, we did niche marketing, 12-minute business plan, but the most popular lesson was the Thursday night lesson called Transformations, when we went deep into the past to let something go.
Right.
Okay. So now to me, instead of shame being secretly hiding a monstrous experience, I now count it as sharing happily a meaningful experience. It's unbelievable, David, how many people and men come up to me and say, thank you. You too.
Right.
And that stopped me from setting goals because I said, what's the point? Because if it's not going to be perfect, I'm not going to hear that. And then it's like, oh, I'm not going to do it. So why would I do it? Because for those of us who are business people and creative people, we get a high on the creativity. So I'll write 17 books, but I've only released 5 of them. No, that's not true for me, but that's what happens. Oh, I'll write another book, and it goes. And again, the old joke is I'll put it on my self-esteem program, right? And it's like, and so we take another course and another course. I invite you to set your goals based on what really, really matters to you. What purpose are you here for? What is your assignment? If you're a God person, what's your God-given assignment? If you're not a God person, what is the universe telling you? You have to do this. Let's say one of your listeners or your followers they're earning $15 an hour right now. Okay. And, well, how do I make more money? Well, you can try and find a job for $16 an hour. Or, and this is a story my pastor told me the other day, money is a reward for solving problems. What if you took a 2-week course, you paid $500 for this 2-week course on how to be a phlebotomist? Okay. A phlebotomist is somebody who draws blood at the blood bank, right? All of a sudden, you spent 2 weeks and $500, and now you're going, instead of your $15 an hour, automatically you're $30. Your small investment of time, your life has just changed. Your income has doubled. So that's possible for us business people too, because money is a reward for solving problems. What problems are you specifically designed to solve?
The DavidCommentary.com show is caffeinated by Bragabilia Energy Beverage. A quiet flex in a can.
There's so many people who say, oh, well, I can teach you how to write a book. Have you ever written a book? Oh, I wrote a book once and it's just an ebook and, it was an Amazon bestseller. And yet they're going to teach the masses how to write a book? Oh, what do you do when the yogurt hits the fan? What do you do when you can't get all the publishers to look at you? How do you re-release it? How do you, I don't know any of that, but I'm going to make a fortune doing this. Why? Because it's a momentary, yes, I'm going to do this. My goal is I want to sell 1 million ebooks at $5 a book. You're not going to do that. Now, forgive me for being so forceful. Maybe you are, but the likelihood is, why don't you find out what is in your heart and celebrate that in the marketplace, even if it's taking your pain and solving somebody else's. What if you were to solve a problem? Oh, well, not everybody's going to. No. You teach them to the level that you're at. I often admit to people, hey, if you're here to learn at a PhD level, I'm not your guy.
Right.
I'm the guy who can take you from life experience of how do you bounce back from a bankruptcy? How do you bounce back when your wife says, I still love you, but I don't want to be married anymore? How do you bounce back when you lose $250,000 on an infomercial and the yogurt hits the fan and they said, you have to declare bankruptcy? I mean, how do you bounce back from that? It's real life. You don't learn that in school. It's real life. You stand up and say, okay, here's my goal. And just a little side note, 4 years ago, actually 1,405 days ago, I started a walking program. I do a minimum of 4,000 steps a day. And the other day, on a week ago, I crossed 1,400 days and 9 million steps. I've never missed a day. I've never not gone out. In Canada, the other day I went out, it was 24 below zero. So I had 2 pairs of, three pairs of underwear.
That's easy here.
Yeah, exactly. And I had 3 pairs of underwear. One of them was my wife's, so I won't, but no. But it was like I'm out there staying warm, but I wouldn't miss. Why? Because it's something little I can do. And again, one last tip. Jack and Mark taught us this when Chicken Soup came out and said, do at least 5 things a day to promote what you're doing. But when I was going through clinical depression, going through all that stuff, this was 7 years ago, I was taking 300 milligrams of Effexor every day. Today, I take nothing. Why? Because God guy, you believe that or not, but at the same time, I couldn't do 5 things. I couldn't fathom it. I could do 1 thing a day. And even at the time, what is it? Well, I can go for a walk. And never missed. I had COVID. I had the flu a couple times. I remember usually it takes me 45 minutes to go out and do that. Sometimes I'll go 10,000 steps. But the one day I had the flu, it took me 2 hours to do my 4,000 step walk. I would stop every couple 100 yards and sit down but I said, I'm doing this. I'm going out. I'm getting fresh air. And people, oh, Barry, you don't have to. I went, I know I don't have to. I choose to.
Right.
So what do you choose to do this year? What goal are you choosing to set that is going to bring you one step closer to your destiny?
So once again, we're chatting about goal setting and the idea of shifting via Barry Spilchuk to a purpose-driven goal. Like, why are you doing what you're trying to do, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, if I were to ask myself a question, it's like, I have a goal for losing weight. My purpose is losing weight because what's the deeper goal? I want to look better. I want to be healthier. I want to be there for my family.
When my coach asked me that, especially on the weight loss goal, when it got down to, you're always supposed to go down to the seven levels and all that kind of stuff, it got real for me when, I don't know if your viewers can see this, but I held up this picture. It's a picture of my granddaughter and a picture of my grandson. I'm the only grandfather they have. And it's like, when I see them, it's like, yes, I'm getting healthier. Every day I'm getting healthier. Every day I'm putting down, the chocolate biscuits. Every day I stop the cookies. Every day, this year I stopped the soda and the chocolate. And every day I take one step closer to my destiny because I want to spend one more day with them. So when you get down to that real why, there's the goal. There's the reason you're going to keep at the goal. And the real reason for me is I want to live a lot longer. So I want to go golfing like I took my sons golfing when I was younger and they were younger. I want to take my grandkids golfing.
I think what's amazing about, because I've worked with you over the years, and I think that, and again, if you want to talk about being talk therapy and, not hypnotherapy, whatever, but I really think one of the more important discoveries that you consistently help people make is a deeper why. Because it's so easy for us to answer a question of like, why are you setting this goal to be a published musician, or why are you setting this goal to make $1 million or earn 6 figures of income? It doesn't matter what it is, but I just think it's fascinating because it's so easy for even yourself to answer that type of question on a surface level. And an acceptable surface level, right? Because I could easily answer that question and seem as though I'm answering it correctly for everyone listening or watching this program. Like I could say, "Oh, why do you want a successful video podcast TV show?" Well, I want to help people. It's like, okay, but
everybody wants to help people,
right?
Do what and why?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, okay, so I really want to help people that. I'm so creative that I do so many things, and it's freaking confusing. And I realize that there's a category of multi-creatives out there like us that are creative that have issues with finishing projects because they just, as he put it, they just kept starting. It's like, but also it's because, again, they're a little bit of a perfectionist. And I think that, to me, that's one of the reasons I'm doing the show is because I want to look at those people and go, look, focus. I know you're talented. I know. Look, dude, I get it. Trust me. I'm literally a juggler, a pianist, a cinematographer. I mean, the list is very confusing, but I get it. But man, if you don't actually accomplish anything, you're just a dreamer. You're just a guy with a lot of shelf ideas who never accomplished anything, who's working at a convenience store with an idea for a book. When we did seminars, they showed up, all the time. It was all multi-creatives. It was like, oh, I got a great idea. I got another great idea. I got another great idea. Right. Well, man, have you done anything? No.
Well, that's the perfection syndrome again. That's right. And then a lot of people, what I found, they got imposter syndrome. And so here's the deal. Here's a test for imposter syndrome. So if I were to say to, let's say Sheila was listening in, and Sheila, oh, I have imposter syndrome. I'm afraid that I'm going to be found out. Well, you won't be found out if you tell the truth. So here's one of the things, Sheila, what do you do? I'm a coach. What do you do? I coach people on their health. Okay, wonderful. So let's say you go meet your friend at a coffee shop. Sheila, could you help that person? Can you help them? Can you really, really help them? Yeah. Can you move them like they came in knowing this, they go out knowing this, and are they going to be better? Yeah. Well, then you're not an imposter.
So once again, my guest, Barry Spilchuk, let's call it a show because we have more than enough material, and let's definitely have you back. Yeah, Barry, I'd love you to be a regular, and so we get this thing rolling again. And
it would
see
be
what
my
else.
honor, David.
I think I like helping people with you. from a goal setting perspective for the new year, find the purpose for your goals and go deep, right?
Yeah, find a purpose for your life. And again, because everybody's teaching life purpose, but what about, okay, if you don't know the purpose, what's my next assignment?
Right.
What am I supposed to do next? Okay, because the purpose to me is just, let's unify everybody. Let's all get together and, let's play nice in the sandbox, right? But what's my next assignment?
Right.
Like what have I put here to do? Based on all the tough stuff I've been through and all the good stuff, what's my next assignment? Who needs me now?
Yeah.
Not who do I need to impress? No, who needs me now?
And
so either
and again,
pray on it, meditate on it, do whatever you do, but who needs me now?
Who needs you now? Once again, my guest, Barry Spilchuk. Barry Spilchuk, how can they find you online?
Oh, I don't have a website.
Okay.
We'll work on really don't have a website. I'm going to have a website for the new book on, great golf under pressure. I'm on Facebook. You can see me on Facebook.
Okay, let's just do that.
Barry Spilchuk. And for those of you who dealing with the cancer, I created a faith-based cancer coping program, and it's called The Cancer Dance. So you can find that on Facebook as well. So there's all kinds of free videos on there on what to do when you hear those terrifying words, you've got cancer.
Yeah.
So just go to, The Cancer Dance on Facebook, and you'll see, I think there's 30 videos on how to handle it, from that first, oh my God, what do I do, to inspirational stuff, to a couple of goofy things, a couple of tear-filled things, and it's all there for you.
Fantastic. Once again, The Cancer Dance on Facebook, Barry Spilchuk on Facebook. You can find it by linking to our social media accounts as well. You've been watching David Comatoy. Thank you for joining us. Barry Spilchuk, thank you so much, sir.
David, my pleasure. I love you, Rod.
Thank you for watching the DavidComatoy.com show. If you're like me, a multi-creative, a juggler, with a ton of great ideas in the process of turning those great ideas into businesses, then we would love to hear from you. Love to know more about you, your project, and what you need next? Register your profile at DavidComatoy.com. And of course, follow me on social media, but really, register at DavidComatoy.com.